How's it going, everyone? Got some random, strange TikToks. Let's check them out. Oh, shoot. No, wait. Oh, I'm sorry.
Is an employee who's recording a video showing what he does in a typical workday. As part of a cleaning crew, his main job is to clean planes that have just landed. This is something that he often does at night, especially with planes that are big enough to hold the most trash. But one night, he decides to do something different. Rather than leaving the plane that he just cleaned, he stays behind. Usually, a cabin cleaner moves on to clean the next aircraft, but seeing that his work was done and that no passengers would board the plane for a while, he stays. Purely for the fun of it, he does this. But this experience was anything but fun, because as he hides in the back of the plane, this happens.
No way. Let's go. Let's go. No, I know I'm not dumb enough to lift those shades up because I got my flash on in here. They gonna catch my ass if they see. Let's. I ain't gonna lie to y'all though, it's mad cold in here. And it's dark. I mean, I know it doesn't look that dark on the camera, but it's dark. Let's go! Let's go! Right, sitting on the back of the plane. And y'all probably think I'm insane. Probably think I'm doing this for fame.
Mm-mm.
Say, probably think I'm doing this for fame.
Caught off guard, he walks over to see if anyone's there, but to his shock, the space is completely empty. Somehow, the seatbelt flings out towards the aisle in a sudden motion, without there being someone on the seat. It seemingly throws itself, as if unbuckled by a passenger who's eager to get off the plane. Whatever it was that just happened scared the living daylights out of him, so much so that he scurries back to his hiding spot in the back of the plane. Hours pass, and he gets off the plane after personnel finds him inside. All in all, this experience has left him so rattled that he continues to share updates talking about this incident and mentioning how he should have stayed out of this plane. It goes without saying, but this incident has spooked him beyond belief.
Hey, hanging out in the plane, man.
So here we are in Sydney, Australia. Various types of the building changing from whatever happened. This structure got cooked, and this is what happened. This is what it looks like. Nobody stuffed bricks and blocks into supposed nature. There's bricks, you can see them pretty plain as day. The bottom here, straight lines, looks like a former railway. You've got iron, everything merged. Nobody's building that down there. Just FYI. The whole thing was a building.
Yeah, we're civilization's built on top of another. Man, I want to know more about those airships, the blimps or whatever I forget what they're called. But man, it looked like it was shooting lasers out in that picture, right? And I was thinking in Revelation, doesn't it say something? I can't remember if it's Revelation or Matthew or. But it's talking about not letting your flight be in winter. I can't remember. I wish I could. But I mean, do you think it's actually talking about a flight, or it's just something to think about? I guess.
People like Clayton were inserted into these roles, pinned as the architect of old world buildings. Clayton went into the United States Navy, where he was now planted in Galveston, Texas in the 1800s, and was destined to be a master architect in our history books, where he became one of the first professional architects in Texas. And of course, the very first architect in Texas would be the best to ever live in Texas, with zero mistakes ever, and his buildings built to last lifetimes, knocking out the Sacred Heart Catholic Church in 1905, where in 1888, the Jesuits took over the responsibilities of the parish. Clayton was also pinned to the main building at St. Edward's University, located in Austin, Texas, where we are told that the first one was completed in 1888, the same exact year that the Jesuits took over the other Clayton Church. And they tell us that the one we see today is the second one, when they rebuilt it no problem at all in 1903 after a fire, where it gets very interesting when they tell us that they hired Clayton to design the structure. But when we go back to his works, this building is not listed, adding to the fire total that we mentioned earlier. Clayton also is said to have designed the Beach Hotel in Galveston, Texas. Construction began in 1882, and they just wrapped that thing right up in 1883. 1 year later. Not a problem in the 1800s, where it was destroyed by a mysterious fire. Just 15 years later, where the cause of the fire was never determined. A 25-minute fire in 1898, and the whole thing is gone. A mysterious fire.
Man, I wonder what like normal civilians were thinking when all this stuff was going on, when they were destroying these old buildings, and what kind of you think like the lies we're told today, like what kind of lies were they telling them back then? Like to get them to go along. I mean, they say them insane asylums, were filled with people that didn't want to, live the lie or whatever. I don't know. I've heard different theories why there's insane asylums, why there's so many. I mean, even from the Southerners from the Civil War, that they were in there, that the whole Civil War was not what we were told. I don't know. It's just interesting. Anyways, I like my lunch break. I ain't watched any of his videos in a little while, but he's pretty good to watch. Goes into pretty good detail sometimes, or a lot of the time. Yeah, that stuff would be creepy, I don't know. It seems like, I don't know. I think it's a combination of how there's more and more cameras nowadays that we're seeing more, but it also seems like, I don't know, maybe there's just more of this kind of stuff going on in general. I don't know. It's really short. No, I don't know what that was.
Half. and then I cut it in half once more right there. You can see me cut it, right? I go get a bag. Okay, I grab the bag. I go back for the lemon, and I grab the lemon, and I touch it, and I'm like, why is it not cut in half?
While the likelihood of this happening is highly improbable, it's not actually impossible, and this lemon glitch can actually be explained through quantum physics with a theory known as quantum tunneling. But rather than me bumble about trying to explain it to you, I'm going to just put a video of Neil deGrasse Tyson explaining it.
An interesting feature of quantum physics is called tunneling. Tunneling. Well, we learned that a particle can also be a wave. Well, a particle has an existence in a spot. Right, here's a particle right now. But when you think of it as a wave, the wave can be in multiple places at once. And when you measure that wave, it becomes a particle. And if you measure that wave over here, the particle shows up over here. If you measure the wave here, the particle shows up here. So there's a chance you can measure the particle in any location in the vicinity. Turns out the particle can tunnel through a barrier that it would not otherwise be able to penetrate. That's like me standing next to a mountain, disappearing and reappearing on the other side of the mountain without having to cross over it and invest any energy doing that at all. That's called quantum tunneling.
I don't like that dude. I think he's a plan anyway. But I don't know. He always makes me think of this verse. I don't remember exactly how it goes, but the Lord has gave the foolish things of the earth to confound the wise. And I don't know, I just think it's interesting. I mean, you know, in the, was it Proverbs or Ecclesiastes? It talks about people that think they're wise, and I mean, it's just funny.
What if everything we know about humanity's history is false? There are numerous accounts of artifacts being confiscated by or sent to the Smithsonian, never to be seen again. Is the Smithsonian Institute covering up America's real history?
Hundreds of the reports, literally hundreds of the reports, ends by saying the bones have been taken away by the Smithsonian for further investigation, and they never get heard of again.
Of the millions of pieces the museum owns, only a small fraction are actually displayed. Forget what they want you to see. What is the Smithsonian hiding? Are ancient Egyptian artifacts removed from the Grand Canyon, hidden in a Smithsonian warehouse?
According to
I mean, I don't think you guys can tell I paused it, but, you know, anyways, yeah, here we go.
reports, the contents of the cave are sent to Washington, but they mysteriously vanish from the historical record.
From stories of giant skeletons to ancient Egyptian artifacts, what is the Smithsonian hiding? At the end of the Indiana Jones film, Raiders of the Lost Ark, the legendary Ark of the Covenant, which has been obtained at great cost, is seen being pushed into some government warehouse, never to be seen again. But could such a secret warehouse, filled with hidden treasures and artifacts, really exist? Many researchers insist it does, and believe the Smithsonian Institute is deliberately hiding clues about humanity's true history. It's been called the nation's attic. The Smithsonian Institute warehouses some 150 million items collected over 200 years. Its 19 museums receive nearly 30 million visitors a year. At the time of the Smithsonian's founding, most of the continent had not been archaeologically explored. The powers that be knew that in order to maintain their version of history, they would need a repository for all the artifacts that do not fit their narrative. Could the true purpose of the Smithsonian be to cover up America's real history and replace it with the version the elite want us to believe? Many researchers believe so and point to numerous newspaper articles claiming incredible finds were taken by the Smithsonian, never to be seen again. Stuff like Egyptian artifacts and giant bones. One such article appeared in the Phoenix Gazette back in 1909 that still sparks fascination and curiosity to this day. It told of two explorers from the Smithsonian who stumbled on a mysterious cave in the Grand Canyon, a discovery that would be the link between an ancient world and ours. Inside the cave, according to the article, they found a dugout maze of geometrically perfect tunnels filled with ancient Egyptian artifacts, including mummies. But how could such an incredible discovery go unnoticed for so long? And why haven't more people heard of it? That's because the two explorers who found it were working for the Smithsonian, and the whole thing was swiftly covered up. The fantastic artifacts and mummies presumably removed.
According to the Gazette, the Smithsonian Institution sent out an archaeologist whose name was Jordan. And Jordan and Kincaid then began exploring these caves.
There are stories and rumors that an expedition was mounted after the discovery, and in one version, 109 truckloads of artifacts were actually removed with very great difficulty from the cavern system.
According to reports, the contents of the cave are sent to Washington, but they mysteriously vanish from the historical record.
It was a front page newspaper story in the 1909 Phoenix Gazette. What they reported was that the Smithsonian Institution was doing excavations in the Grand Canyon. It was being supervised by an archaeologist named Jordan. It all had to do with another explorer named Kincaid, who had been traveling down the Grand Canyon. And what he claimed he discovered was these caverns. Inside these caverns were, he thought, and the Smithsonian then later confirmed, according to the newspaper report, that there were Egyptian artifacts, there were Hindu, Buddhist artifacts from India. They were saying that, there were mummies in there, and that apparently they had a special vault in the Grand Canyon where they buried some of the leaders, people they had left behind with artifacts and things like that, and that the Smithsonian Institution got involved. They were hauling all this stuff out of these caves, including these mummies, swords, shields, statues. The Jordan, the archaeologist who was going back to Washington, D.C., back to the Smithsonian. And, this is these exciting new discoveries in the Grand Canyon.
Today, the Smithsonian will deny any knowledge of these discoveries, and the area where the cave is supposedly located is now off limits. Investigators are further convinced by the numerous Egyptian names given to areas and geological features of the Grand Canyon. Names such as Isis Temple, Tower of Set, Tower of Ra. But what became of the ancient mummies and Egyptian artifacts that were supposedly taken by the Smithsonian? Could they be stored in some secret warehouse? Many researchers, such as David Hatcher Childress, believe it's a possibility.
And it's really a lot like the first Indiana Jones movie, where Indiana Jones has discovered the Lost Ark of the Covenant, and then right at the end of the movie, he says, well, where's the Ark? And they tell him, oh, well, don't worry, top men are working on it.
Where is the Ark?
The Ark is somewhere very safe.
From whom? The Ark is a source of unspeakable power, and it has to be researched.
And it will be, I assure you, Dr. Brody, Dr. Jones. We have top men working on it right now.
Who?
Top men.
And then the last scene in the movie is this giant warehouse, apparently at the Smithsonian, and the Ark of the Covenant is in this crate, and it's being put in this giant warehouse, and no one's ever going to see it again.
But if such a clandestine facility does exist, what other hidden items from our history might be stored there? That's where the story gets even more intriguing. There are numerous accounts of giant skeletons being found across America, only to be taken away by the Smithsonian. In 1912, archaeological excavations of ancient mounds near Lake Delavan in Wisconsin had found skeletons of extraordinary dimensions, some of them nearly 10 feet tall. On May 4th, the New York Times picked up the story. The article tells of 18 skeletons of a quote-unquote hitherto unknown race, and adds that the skulls of the skeletons were unusually large. And that was only one of over a dozen similar stories reported in newspapers in the late 19th, early 20th century.
So in the articles of the giants that were found in the late 1800s into the early 1900s, yeah, they found a lot of bones. There's some photographs in the book that show that they did find something that was phenomenal in size. And I'm not talking one or two cases. There's dozens of them. And they're scattered across the U.S. And many times they're related to what's called today Indian mounds. Either in or near the mound, they found these giant skeletons.
Giant skeletal remains have been found in Minnesota, Iowa, Illinois, Ohio, Kentucky, New York, and other places around the world, many of which found their way to the Smithsonian, where they were never seen again.
Long been fascinated by legends of American giants is David Hatcher Childress.
A number of mounds in the Midwest in America were excavated starting around 1850. And in many cases, they would find skeletons of people who were in excess of 7 feet tall.
The one that was found in Bridal Veil Falls, California by a group of miners, first they found this wall with very intricate hieroglyphics. They assumed that they were finding gold behind the wall. They broke it down and they found this woman holding a child covered with fur and a strange kind of dust. The same tall female mummified remains have been found in Texas. They have been found in Death Valley. They have been found in other parts of California.
These old photographs and newspaper clippings are all that survive of these mysterious giants.
So this is the first level of kind of cover-up conspiracy when the Smithsonian got involved. And they got so involved, it got to a point where they were, as soon as there was any report, they would...
All right, the video just cut off. But, yeah, the Smithsonian sucks, dude. I remember I had I knew this guy, this was years and years ago, like before I even ever thought about any of this stuff. But he said he had found this bone. It was, you know, you can't see because my camera's on. It's really long. And it looked like a leg bone or an arm bone. I don't know what kind of bone, but it was really, really long. He said he found it buried in his backyard. And, man, I'd love to. I don't know how to get a hold of that guy anymore, but I'd love to see if he still has it. Just, you know, after seeing stuff like this, just to, you know, he thought it was some animal bone or something. I don't know. But it didn't look, you know, I don't know. It was big, though.
Alone in their house when one of them sees something in the doorway. Pause the video and you can see it's clearly the upper half of a young girl who is dressed in old-fashioned clothes from another time period. She is floating in midair as she curiously peeks in on the two children to see what they are doing. One of the girls still doesn't see the ghost. She shouts at something that's on television and accidentally startles the ghost away. The girl with the camera follows the ghost as it retreats. The ghost instantly teleports and now stares at them from the top of the steps. The scared girls run out of the house screaming. They stop only for a second to turn around from the street. They can see the ghost girl walking across the left window on the top floor. It vanishes and then suddenly appears on the bottom floor in less than a second. They scream even louder and take off again. Number 2, stay out of the attic. Back in 2008, a man started to notice some strange activities around his house. He would often come home from work to find his dogs cowering under the bed, too afraid to come out. One of his dogs would only come out from under the bed for a brief 10 seconds at most before going straight back into hiding. Something was intimidating these large dogs badly. The owner starts to hear banging noises coming from all over his house. He begins to look around. He eventually traces the noise to his attic and goes upstairs with a camera for a closer look. Everything is completely trashed. Boxes are overturned and clothing is scattered everywhere. Something has violently flung all of his personal possessions all around. As soon as he goes back downstairs, he hears another huge bang and runs right back up the steps. He puts the camera down and searches the empty attic for clues. A nearby metal bucket falls over and he runs out of the room before he gets hurt. Another object hits the ground on its own and the camera moves to the right on its own too. The homeowner was too scared to look at the footage. He waited a
a week before going back upstairs to get his camera. By now, he is understandably quite paranoid. He begins recording everything he does in his home, and it isn't long before he has more paranormal evidence. One day, his radio turns to static and a spirit orb rushes out the window. Later, someone violently jiggles the doorknob to the door that leads to the attic. The door opens and shuts by itself. The radio goes back to normal soon after. Things look to be going back to normal for a second, but then a paper towel roll suddenly flies up from the table to the couch, and the radio starts making more sounds again. The video recording starts to get fuzzy too, as if a ghost is causing electrical disturbances by passing by. Both of his dogs begin to look in the same spot as if they are following something. Whatever it was, the man was never able to physically catch it on film. He was only able to record its strange and oftentimes violent behaviors. Number 1. Ghoul School. This footage comes from somewhere in the Middle East. A group of teenagers are curiously exploring an old school. They go up a flight of steps and pause when they hear a dog whining on the other side of the door. They all run down the steps and gather at the bottom. They're afraid of being attacked by a group of stray dogs now, but they decide to press on and explore the lower areas. The group finds bravery in their numbers and begins to joke and laugh again as they make their way down a long hallway. They open a door and find graffiti on the wall. Other people had been here before them. Maybe this place isn't so bad after all. The teens grow a little more nervous as they continue to poke around. They are laughing less and starting to go silent. Something just isn't right about this section of the building. A YouTuber named Zabin Jaguar translated their comments. He says at this point one of the teens say that their phone shut itself off even though it was fully charged only a moment ago. Another person was able to keep recording, though they probably now wish they hadn't. They enter one classroom in particular and get a dreadful feeling. Suddenly a figure actually appears out of thin air and walks towards them. The ghost is missing his head, but there's somehow no blood. A loud chanting begins as soon as the ghost walks towards them, but this may be prayers from a nearby mosque. Amazingly, the group all appears to have missed the ghost, which explains why they calmly continue to keep exploring. They wouldn't see the apparition until much later, but when they did, they would never forget what was heading straight towards them in that room.
Yeah, that'd be creepy. Man, never mind. I forgot. Thought it was something. I can't remember what it was now. There we go.
The hidden Egypt. Is it possible that the heart of the biblical Egypt was in the Americas? Let's talk about it. Now, when it comes to looking for the geographic locations of certain civilizations, using the description from the books that talk about these civilizations, such as the Bible talking about Egypt, one of the best clues of finding a geographic location of a civilization is to look at the description of the big famous body of water that is next to these civilizations. For example, the most famous body of water next to Egypt, according to the Bible, happens to be the Nile. Now let's take a look at one of the descriptions of what the Bible says about the Nile River. This is Isaiah chapter 11 verse 15. And the Lord shall utterly destroy the tongue of the Egyptian sea, and with his mighty wind shall he shake his hand over the river, and shall smite it in the 7 streams, and make men go over dry shod. So in the book of Isaiah it says that the Nile has 7 major streams. However, when you look up the modern African Nile, it only has 3 main tributaries, 3 main streams. But the Bible states that the Nile has 7 streams. So when discussing ancient Egypt, the focus has to be on the Nile River system of the White Nile and the Blue Nile, which is allegedly the longest river in the world at 4,132 miles long. However, when you combine the Mississippi River system of the Missouri River, 2,540 miles, and the Mississippi, 2,340 miles, you have a total length in miles of 4,890, which is 758 miles longer than the Nile River system that is in Africa. So yes, the Mississippi River system is the longest, which is a strong indication that it was your first Nile River system. So the Mississippi River has 7 major streams, and it flows into the Gulf of Mexico, which possibly could indicate that the Gulf of Mexico was once known as the Egyptian Sea in the book of Isaiah, chapter 11, verse 15. Additional clues can be found with a quick study of the etymology of the name Missouri. You will learn that it's just a corruption of the word Mitzrayim. Who was Mitzrayim? Mitzrayim, according to the Bible, was the son of Ham. He was the younger brother of Cush and the elder brother of Phut and Canaan, the Phoenicians. Those families together made up the Hamite branch of Noah's descendants. So Mitzrayim is the Hebrew word for Egypt. So yeah, as I've stated, the modern African Nile only has 3 main tributaries, 3 main streams coming from the Nile, but the Bible states that there are 7. The Mississippi has 7 major streams. It is one of the longest rivers in the world, and it flows into the Mexican Gulf, or what is possibly the tongue of the Egyptian Sea. Mitzrayim is the Hebrew and Aramaic name for the land of Egypt. Mitzrayim is the dual form of Matzor, meaning a mound or fortress, the name of a people descended from Ham. It was the name generally given by the Hebrews to the land of Egypt and its people. You have mounds found all over the Americas, but especially all up and down the Mississippi River. In fact, you have so many mounds built along the Mississippi River, the academics have named the people that built them the Mississippi Mound Builders. This is a significant fact because mounds are associated with Mitzrayim, which is Egypt. You have virtually no mounds in Africa. Therefore, the sheer number of mounds in the Americas and pyramids in the Americas is a strong indication that America is Mitzrayim.
Man, that stuff's so interesting. And I don't know. I need to check out some more. I think I have reacted to some of these videos before, and I know I've seen some of them before, but I hope I didn't replay any. Anyways, that's the last video I got on this one. I appreciate you watching. Thank you very much, and have a good day. God bless.